My son texted me on Christmas Eve. Dad, we've decided to keep Christmas small this year. Just our little family. You understand, right? Before I could respond, my daughter-in-law added her own message. Honestly, Gerald, it's been awkward having you at our table. You make the kids uncomfortable. Maybe next year. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I opened my banking app, looked at the $7,200 I sent them every single month, and typed back one sentence. Understood. I'll be canceling all financial support effective immediately. Merry Christmas. I left the group chat. Within 40 minutes, my phone showed 83 missed calls, and that was only the beginning of what I'd set in motion. But before we get into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a comment telling us where you're listening from today. The message arrived at 4:15 on a Monday afternoon, December 23rd. I was in my office on King Street in downtown Hamilton, Ontario, finishing up a year-end review for one of my long-term clients. Snow was falling outside the window, thick and steady, the kind that turns the escarpment into a postcard. My phone buzzed against the oak desk. I expected it to be my son confirming what time I should arrive on Christmas Day, maybe asking if I could pick up an extra bottle of wine from that shop on Lock Street he liked. Instead, I read those words. Small this year. Just our little family. I read it twice. 3 times. Took off my reading glasses and cleaned them on my shirt, as if the problem was my vision rather than the message itself. Just our little family. I was his father. I was the reason he had a family at all. Then Vanessa's message appeared. My daughter-in-law. The woman my son had married 6 years ago in a ceremony I paid for entirely. Every flower, every plate of salmon, every hour of the DJ, $38,000 for one evening of open bar and speeches about love and family. And now she was telling me I made the kids uncomfortable, that my presence at their table was awkward. I set the phone down on my desk the way you'd set down a glass that's already cracked. Carefully, because the damage was already done. The office was quiet. Most of my colleagues at the advisory firm had left early for the holidays. Janet from reception had said goodbye an hour ago, her arms full of gift bags. Through the wall, I could hear the faint hum of the building's heating system working overtime against the December cold. I picked up the phone again and opened my banking app. Not impulsively, deliberately. The way I'd open a client's portfolio when something didn't add up and the numbers needed examining. I scrolled through the recurring payments I'd set up over the past 7 years, since my wife Claire died of pancreatic cancer and left me with a grief so heavy, I tried to fill it by being useful to the only family I had left. Mortgage on their house in Burlington, $2,400 monthly. I'd co-signed the loan 3 years ago when my son couldn't qualify on his own, then quietly started making the payments when he told me things were tight. Car payment for the Hyundai Palisade Vanessa insisted she needed for the children, $620. My son's truck lease, the Ford F-150, he said was necessary for his landscaping business, even though most of his contracts were residential, and a used pickup would have done fine, $580. Private school tuition for both grandchildren at a Montessori academy in Oakville. Quarterly, but it worked out to about $1,800 a month. Their home insurance, $340. Vanessa's credit card, which she'd convinced me to cover because she was investing in marketing materials for a photography business that, as far as I could tell, had produced exactly 0 paying clients in 3 years. That ran about $1,100 on average, sometimes more. Utilities, internet, the premium streaming package. I added it all up, though I already knew the number. I'd known it for years without letting myself really think about it. $7,200 every month, $86,400 a year. For 7 years, the snow kept falling outside. Hamilton was disappearing under white. I thought about Claire, about the last conversation we'd had before the morphine took her somewhere I couldn't follow. She'd held my hand and said, "Don't let guilt make you stupid, Gerald. Love them, but don't let them eat you alive." I hadn't listened. I'd been too busy trying to prove that I could be both parents at once, that money could patch every hole her absence left. My thumb moved across the screen. I typed my response into the group chat. Read it once. Didn't change a word. Hit send. Watched the blue check marks appear. Then I held down on the chat name, selected leave group, confirmed yes when it asked if I was sure. The chat vanished from my screen like it had never existed. I opened my banking app on both my phone and my laptop, side by side. Two screens, like monitoring a portfolio liquidation. The mortgage payment was first. Logged into TD Bank, found the recurring transfer, clicked cancel. A polite dialog box asked if I was certain. I was certain. The car payments required logging into separate finance portals. Hyundai Capital Canada first. Vanessa's Palisade. Cancel. Then Ford credit for my son's truck. Cancel. Each confirmation felt like removing a stone from a wall I'd been carrying on my back. The tuition portal for Burlington Montessori Academy took longer. More security questions, more confirmations, but it canceled just the same. By the time I'd finished with the insurance, the utilities, and the credit card autopay, my phone had started vibrating. My son's name flashing on the screen. I turned the phone face down on the desk and continued working. The vibrations came in waves. 30 seconds of buzzing, a brief silence, then buzzing again. I packed my briefcase, put on my winter coat, wrapped my scarf around my neck, locked the office. The elevator was empty. The parking garage was nearly deserted. Just my car and two others, all wearing caps of snow. I brushed off the windshield with the scraper I kept in the back seat. Started the engine, let it warm up while the phone continued its silent tantrum in my coat pocket. The drive to my condo in Dundas took 25 minutes through heavy snow. I'd moved there after selling the family home in Ancaster 2 years earlier. A clean 2-bedroom unit overlooking the valley, with a view of the frozen waterfall in winter and the green canopy in summer. Claire would have loved it. Inside, I hung my coat, set my briefcase down, and finally pulled out my phone. The lock screen was chaos. 83 missed calls, 51 text messages. I scrolled through the call log. My son, Vanessa. My son, Vanessa. Vanessa. A number I didn't recognize that was probably Vanessa's mother calling from Mississauga. I powered off the ringer, disabled vibration, and placed the phone face up on the kitchen counter where I could watch the screen light up silently with each attempt. From the cupboard above the fridge, I took down a bottle of Canadian Club that had been sitting there since Thanksgiving, poured 2 fingers into a heavy glass, carried it to the living room window. The snow was still coming down, turning the Dundas Valley into something out of a group of 7 painting, beautiful and indifferent to whatever was happening in my kitchen. I spoke to the empty room. 7 years, over $600,000, and I'm not even worth a seat at Christmas dinner. The phone screen glowed on the counter behind me. Another silent call. I didn't turn around. The whiskey was smooth. I took a slow sip and let it settle. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. The day after that, Christmas. I'd spend both however I wanted. Maybe I'd drive up to Niagara-on-the-Lake, find a restaurant that was open, sit by a window and watch the snow fall on a town that looked like a Christmas card without trying. Christmas morning, I woke to silence. No phone calls, no emergency texts, just pale winter light through the blinds and the sound of a snowplow scraping the street below. I made coffee in the French press Claire had given me for our 30th anniversary, the one luxury I'd kept when I downsized. Sat at my dining table with my laptop, legal pad beside me, pen aligned with the pad's edge. Old habits from 40 years of financial work. I pulled up every document connected to my son's life that bore my name. The mortgage agreement first, co-signed, but the property was in both our names because his credit score hadn't qualified him a loan. I'd been making every payment since month 4. No formal rental agreement existed, no written understanding of terms, just a father helping his son and a son who'd stopped noticing. The vehicle leases were cleaner, both in my name entirely. Primary leaseholder, Gerald Arthur Mackenzie. My son was listed as an authorized driver on the Ford. Vanessa wasn't listed on the Hyundai at all. She'd been driving a vehicle she had no legal connection to for 2 years. I made notes in my precise handwriting. Property co-signed. Vehicles solely mine. No lease agreement for the house. No documentation of any arrangement. My position was strong. I didn't call a lawyer on Christmas Day. Even I had limits. But on December 27th, I contacted a property attorney named Rachel Okafor, whose name appeared on 3 separate recommendation lists for Hamilton area real estate disputes. Her office was on James Street South, not far from my old office. We met on December 30th. She reviewed everything with the kind of focused attention I recognized from my own profession. Someone who understood that details were where truth lived. She looked up from the documents and said my legal position was excellent. The vehicles could be recovered almost immediately. The house would take longer because I'd co-signed the mortgage rather than owning it outright, but since I'd been making every payment and no rental agreement existed, I had strong grounds to force a sale or negotiate a buyout of my son's interest, which was effectively worth nothing since he'd contributed nothing financially. She could send a formal demand letter within the week. I wrote the retainer check without hesitation. New Year's passed quietly. I went to a small gathering at my colleague Martin's house in Stony Creek, drank champagne at midnight, drove home through empty streets that sparkled with frost. My phone had gone mostly silent by then. Either my son had given up calling, or he was regrouping. I suspected the latter. January 3rd confirmed it. My doorbell camera showed my son and Vanessa standing in the corridor outside my condo. He knocked softly. She stood behind him with her arms crossed, mouth moving in what looked like instructions. I turned up the audio on my phone. Vanessa's voice came through small but sharp. "Knock harder. He's in there." My son tried again. Then Vanessa stepped forward and pounded on the door herself. "Gerald, open this door. You can't just cut off your own grandchildren like this." What kind of grandfather does that? I watched from my armchair, phone balanced on my knee. They stayed for 12 minutes. I counted. Then Vanessa grabbed my son's arm and pulled him toward the elevator. I returned to my book. The demand letter went out on January 6th. Rachel had drafted it precisely. 30 days to vacate the property or face formal proceedings. The vehicles would be retrieved by January 15th. I forwarded a copy to my email, saved it in the folder I'd created called Legal Documentation. On January 10th, Vanessa called me from my son's phone. I answered, expecting his voice. Instead, she erupted. "This is illegal. We have children in this house. You can't evict children in Canada in January. I'll call CAS. I'll call the police. I'll tell everyone what you're doing." I waited for her to pause for breath. Then I said, "Everything is being handled through my lawyer. You should consult your own." I hung up, blocked her number, and returned to the portfolio I'd been rebalancing. Mrs. Drummond was 76 and needed more fixed income exposure. Her allocation had drifted and it needed attention. That was real work. That made sense. January 15th. I watched the security camera feed from the Burlington house as a flatbed truck backed into the driveway. The Hyundai Palisade was first. Vanessa came out in her housecoat despite the -15 cold, stood in front of the vehicle, arms spread wide. "I have children. They need to get to school. You can't take a mother's car." The driver showed her the paperwork. She called someone on her phone, pacing, gesturing, breath coming out in clouds of white. Eventually, she moved aside, pulled some toys and a yoga mat from the back seat. The Palisade disappeared onto the flatbed. The next day, the Ford went the same way. My son stood in the driveway watching it leave. He didn't argue, didn't block the truck, just stood there with his hands in his pockets, shoulders rounded against the wind coming off Lake Ontario. Something in his posture reminded me of when he was 12 and I'd told him we were putting the family dog down. That same helplessness. I closed the app, felt pity, but it was distant, clinical. The way you feel watching a stock you sold continue to drop. The Facebook post appeared on January 20th. Vanessa's profile, public as always. My father-in-law is evicting his own son, daughter-in-law, and 2 young grandchildren in the middle of a Canadian winter. We have nowhere to go. The children are terrified. I never thought family could be this heartless. Please share and pray for us. 83 comments. 41 shares. I scrolled through the responses. Outrage and sympathy. The predictable chorus. I didn't respond publicly. Instead, I sent a private message to 3 colleagues who'd known me for decades, attached screenshots of the Christmas Eve chat, my son's exclusion, Vanessa's words about me making the kids uncomfortable, and a simple note. This is what prompted my decision. You know me. Judge for yourself. Closed my phone. Went to bed. The people who mattered would figure it out. February was brutal in the way. Ontario winters are brutal. Gray skies, salt-stained roads, the kind of cold that makes you question why anyone lives this far north. Vanessa's mother, Darlene, called me on a Thursday evening. She was crying before she finished saying my name. Gerald, please. The children. Mia is 9. She's crying every night. Caleb is 6. He doesn't understand why they're moving. You're destroying their childhood. I let her talk for nearly an hour. She cycled through every argument. Family forgives. Children are innocent. Claire would be heartbroken. I waited until she mentioned my wife's name, then spoke quietly. Claire told me on her deathbed not to let guilt make me stupid. I ignored that for 7 years. I'm listening now. Darlene went silent for a long moment. Then she said something I hadn't expected. I didn't know they'd excluded you from Christmas, Gerald. My daughter told me you refused to come. She lied, Darlene. I have the messages. Can you send them to me? I did. She read them while still on the phone. I heard her breath catch. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. I'll call you back. She hung up. I never heard from her again in that capacity, but I learned later from Rachel that Darlene had confronted Vanessa, and the resulting argument had been volcanic. By mid-February, they moved out. I watched the security cameras as my son loaded a rented U-Haul in the dark, his breath visible in the freezing air, his movements mechanical with exhaustion. Vanessa sat in a borrowed car with the engine running, the children in the back seat. They drove away at 9:47 p.m. The house sat empty under the streetlights, snow accumulating on the walkway no one would shovel. I closed my laptop, sat in the darkness of my condo. Felt relief, not triumph. This wasn't winning. It was just the end of hemorrhaging. Like closing a position that's been losing money for years. You don't celebrate. You just stop the bleed. I drove to the Burlington house the next morning. Used my key. The sound echoed. Walked through every room. They'd cleaned reasonably well, but there were scratches along the hallway wall from furniture, a stain on the living room carpet, a cracked tile in the bathroom that had been cracked for at least a year based on the discoloration. I photographed everything but didn't plan to pursue damages. Rachel had advised the same thing. You've made your point. Chasing them for a carpet stain will make you look petty. She was right. I locked the door. Stood in the driveway looking at the house I'd financed for 6 years. Snow crunched under my boots. A cardinal sat on the fence, red against white, watching me with one black eye. I got in my car and drove home. The police call came in early March. A detective from Halton Regional Police. Polite and professional. Mr. Mackenzie. We've received a complaint from Vanessa Mackenzie, alleging financial abuse of a vulnerable person. We'd like to ask you some questions. I stayed calm. I'll have my attorney provide all relevant documentation. The allegation is false. Rachel handled it within 3 days. Sent the detective the mortgage records, the payment history, the screenshots from Christmas Eve, the demand letter, the vehicle lease agreements. The detective called back. Mackenzie, we're satisfied there's no basis for investigation. Sorry for the inconvenience. The false report, Rachel told me later, was a serious misstep. Filing a complaint with fabricated claims created a paper trail of dishonesty that would work against Vanessa if she tried anything else. It also turned neutral observers firmly to my side. People could forgive desperation. They couldn't forgive lying to the police. March brought the first signs of spring. The snow started retreating. The days got longer. I listed the house with a realtor named Thomas Pratt, who specialized in Burlington properties. Listed at $785,000, slightly above market but justified by the location and the renovations I'd paid for over the years. Thomas said he'd have it on MLS within the week. I called Rachel afterward. Once it's sold, You know there's no reversing this. I know. That's the point. The house sold in April for $770,000. All cash buyer. A young couple relocating from Toronto. I netted $412,000 after the mortgage balance and fees. Met with my financial advisor. Transferred everything into a balanced portfolio of Canadian dividend stocks and GICs. Conservative, stable, funding my retirement, not someone else's entitlement. Spring also brought Leo's email. I still called him Leo in my head sometimes, even though his name was Mitchell. My son. The email's subject line was simple. I get it now. I opened it expecting excuses dressed as apology. Instead, I read 5 sentences. Dad, I understand what we did. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. Vanessa filed for divorce. She moved to Calgary with her mother. I'm working 2 jobs and trying to be the father you were before I ruined everything. I just wanted you to know. I'm trying. No signature. No love, Mitchell. Just those words. I read them 3 times, started typing a response, deleted it, started again, deleted it again, saved the email in a folder called Archive, not trash. Acknowledgement received. Response unnecessary. For now. Summer arrived the way it does in southern Ontario. Suddenly and completely. One week the trees were bare. The next they were exploding green. I spent my evenings on my condo balcony watching the valley transform. My financial dashboard showed accounts healthier than they'd been in a decade. No parasitic payments draining $7,200 monthly. My retirement projections had adjusted upward dramatically. The compound interest alone on what I'd been giving away would fund an extra 7 years of comfortable living. I thought about that often. 7 years of giving. 7 extra years of retirement security recovered. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. In July, Darlene called again. Her voice was different now. Softer, without the weaponized grief of our February conversation. Gerald, the children are with Mitchell on weekends. They ask about you, Mia especially. She remembers you teaching her to skate at Pier 8. My chest tightened. The first real pain since Christmas. Not for Mitchell or Vanessa. For Mia, who was 9, and probably confused about why her world had rearranged itself. For Caleb, who was 6, and might not remember me at all if enough time passed. Darlene, would Mitchell object if I saw the children at your place? Not as part of fixing anything between us. Just separately. Just me and them. She paused. He won't object. He told me last week he knows he destroyed the relationship and the children shouldn't pay for his mistakes. The following Saturday, I drove to Darlene's house in Mississauga, carried a bag with a jigsaw puzzle I'd bought, a map of Canada with all the provinces in different colors, age-appropriate, educational, something we could do together without pressure. Mia was in the living room when I walked in. She froze for a moment. Then she ran across the room and hugged me so hard I nearly lost my balance. Caleb hung back behind Darlene's leg, watching with suspicious eyes. He'd been 3 when I last saw him regularly. I was probably more stranger than grandfather to him now. We spent the afternoon on the floor around that puzzle. Mia chattered about her new school in Hamilton, about how her teacher let them have a class hamster, about how she could do a cartwheel now. Caleb warmed up slowly. By the time we'd found all the pieces for British Columbia, he was sitting in my lap pointing at the picture on the box. Is that where the mountains are, Grandpa? That's where the mountains are. Darlene watched from the kitchen doorway, smiling with wet eyes. When I left, Mia hugged me again. Caleb waved from behind Darlene. A small wave, but real. I drove home through Saturday traffic on the QEW. The lake glittering blue to my right. Felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph. Not vindication. Just peace. August settled over Hamilton like a warm hand. The escarpment was lush and green, the waterfalls running strong from summer rain. I stood on my balcony one evening with iced tea, watching the sun descend behind the tree line. My phone showed a text from Darlene. The children want to know if you're coming Saturday. Mia says she found the piece for Nunavut. I typed back, I'll be there. Tell her I'm bringing the territories. Set the phone down. Watched the last light fade from the valley. 9 months since Christmas Eve. 9 months since those messages telling me I wasn't wanted at their table, that I made the kids uncomfortable, that my presence was awkward. I thought about Mitchell working his 2 jobs, the IT support during the day, the warehouse shifts at night, about Vanessa in Calgary, the divorce papers filed, the marriage collapsed under the weight of consequences she hadn't anticipated when she told me to stay away, about Mia and Caleb adjusting to a smaller house, a public school, a life without the cushion of a grandfather's money. I felt neither guilt nor glee, just acceptance, boundaries maintained, dignity reclaimed. I hadn't won my family back. That wasn't the goal anymore. But I'd won myself back, my sense of self-worth, my right to be treated with basic respect, the right to sit at a table, any table, without having to earn it through monthly payments. Claire's voice echoed in my memory. Don't let guilt make you stupid, Gerald. I'd finally listened. 7 years too late, but I'd listened. The money I'd recovered sat secure in conservative funds. The house was sold. The vehicles were returned. The automatic payments were ancient history. My monthly budget was clean, simple, mine. The evening deepened. Streetlights came on along the road below. A couple walked past with a golden retriever, their laughter drifting up through the warm air. Somewhere a barbecue was going, the smell of charcoal and burgers mixing with the green scent of the valley. Normal life. The kind I'd been too busy funding for others to fully live myself. I finished my tea, picked up my phone, looked one more time at the photo I'd taken at Darlene's house last Saturday. Me and the children on the floor, Mia pointing triumphantly at a puzzle piece, Caleb leaning against my shoulder with his thumb near his mouth, both of them laughing at something I'd said about polar bears in Manitoba. I allowed myself a small smile. Then I walked inside, closed the balcony door behind me. The sunset continued without me. Beautiful, indifferent, exactly as it should be. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. To listen to the next story, tap the box on the left. Thank you for watching.